All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to Diversus Live. We're here to talk all things poetry. To join you in this journey, I am one of your hosts. My name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
And wow,
Yeah.
you never know.
It
You
just
catch me
surprised me
off
too.
guard every
I
time.
was shocked.
Never know.
Gotta switch it up.
So Matthias, we used to run an open mic,
We did. We did used to do that.
and you guys can let us know because something I'm curious about. Is there any open mic where you live, and how often do you frequent it? Are you supporting the poetry in your community?
How often does open mic happen? Because that's also a really important
That is a
question.
very important
You know what I
question.
mean? Yeah.
What do you think is a good cadence for an open mic? Let's kind of just start off right off the bat.
Ooh. I think it kind of depends on because it depends on the people that are running it, kind of what their capacity is. Because honestly, I would say that a weekly open, like your city could really use at least one weekly open mic. One open mic that you can reliably go to every week, that you can express your poems and say the things that you want to say on the mic. What I will say about that though is running an open mic is not a
It's a commitment.
it's not an easy situation. It's not an easy gig, right? So there's a lot of work, there's a lot of back end work that kind of goes into it if you're doing it well or you're doing it efficiently. So which is just to say that I would rather an open mic that's ran bi-weekly or even monthly really well than an open mic that's ran weekly and the people that are running it like just they don't have the capacity to do it very well. So just I don't think there's a set number that's a requirement. I think the best case scenario is that at the very least you have one open mic that you can go to every week, because then you can kind of capture the people that maybe they don't have the capacity to do it during the first whatever day, like whatever week, and maybe you can catch them in the second week. Like people's schedules fluctuate. So yeah.
That's something I'm kind of curious about as well, in the sense that if you know it's every week, it's like if you miss it, you're like, oh, I'll just go next time. Whereas like if it's something that's like once a month, it's like, oh man, if I miss it, that limiting factor, I think, can work in a more or in a less frequent open mic's favor. Though I personally would kind of the same thing as you do. I would prefer open mic that's meeting weekly. I think that works for the most benefit.
Yeah, because I think even with that in that paradigm, this you still have you can kind of push that out to if somebody's like, well, I know I missed January's, I'll be back in February. And I mean, that's a much longer time to have to wait between open mics. But I think there's people that would have that same mentality. I mean, we used to run seventh draft poetry as well. And with seventh draft poetry, that was a monthly open mic. And that was absolutely something like, some people would come and they would say, well, hey, I missed January's, but I'll go to February's or whatever the situation might be. So yeah, it kind of just again, just like what you were saying there too. I think it just kind of depends on what the capacity that you have. Because also, I think the cool thing about a monthly open mic is that you're probably going to have your regulars, people that have the capacity to come every single open mic, and you can rely on seeing them at least most of the open mics every month. But you also are going to get you're going to get a little bit of a different audience for the most for a good portion of it, which is going to be people that, hey, I couldn't come the first week, so I come the second weeks of the month, or I come I go once a month. But I can kind of choose whichever one I have the best availability for. So you kind of give people that kind of openness in the schedule, and that way they have that little bit of openness. But then also, I feel like if you have a fairly well ran open mic and the word gets around, like there's people that want to express themselves, there's people that want to get on the mic. So you're going to develop the audience. Like I don't think I would necessarily worry about people just think that they can just miss my open mic, because I'm like, yeah, of course they can. And because I want them to have an open mic that they can go to, but I also understand that there's a lot of people that have a lot of different scheduling conflicts that they're going to need to miss. They're going to need to not be there during 1 week, and I want them to be able to say, well, okay, I can't be there this week, but next week they're going to be open at 8, so I'll be there.
I think it's easier to break into people's routines and develop that sense of community when it's meeting more frequently. That's,
Yeah.
if you only do it once a month, then the one of the issues with that is, yeah, it's like a kind of a special thing, but then you're not breaking into the people's cadence. I
Yeah.
think when you have like a recurring event, you want it's hard, especially when it's new, because people already have their lives. Like right now, before your event's running, people have that time in their life already filled. And so when you start an event that's recurring, you're trying to break into that. And that's
Yeah.
that's really hard to do. And especially if it's only once a month. Whereas like if it's weekly, people can start be like, oh, this is every week. I can have dinner a little later that night. You know what I mean? Or like I can do
Yeah.
this. Like I think it's a little bit easier in that regard. I see James here. What's up, James? James has been popping around on the channel a lot recently, which is great. We
What's going
appreciate
on,
you.
James?
James saying I have to drive 2 hours to go to one, either in Dallas or OKC. What part? What part?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're
Yeah.
in Texas. I'm guessing we used to live down in Texas in San Antonio for a couple of years. Um, is there? Are you the only poet where you live? Just kind of curious about that. And then James also mentions they've talked to a couple people in the nearest town, but no one's interested. It's so hard to get people to give it a chance for some reason. Facts. Welcome to events. That's just event. The hardest thing about events is getting people to sit. Just filling seats is really hard.
You know what I found out? I think about myself personally. I think there's a level of my personality that like open mics just would not be I wouldn't go in search of an open, like that person wouldn't go in search of an open mic.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like there's the parts of me that are like I'm a writer, I'm a performer, and I also enjoy seeing people's work.
Mm-hmm.
That I would love to go to. I do love to go to open mics, but there's absolutely a level of I think sometimes it feels like despair, which is like if you're in an open mic, like if I'm having a great day and then like I'm hearing people kind of unload a lot of the things either in their days or their lives and stuff like that, that there's a level of that can feel kind of draining. And I think that for the average person, so like we're talking about people that maybe don't have a lot of interest in writing poems, but they might be people that would go to your open mic because they might be people that would want to see your poems or see poems in general. It's like that's going to be the people that you really want to captivate, because like having poets come to your show is great, but then there's a good amount of poets, I would say, out there. And when I say that, I don't mean like bad poets. I mean like poets that are like, I write poems, but I don't want to get on stage. I don't want to, like, I'm a little too nervous. I'm not gonna. So it's gonna be hard to build a show around that, at least at the beginning. Whereas if you have, if you're able to really grow the amount of people that are willing to get up there and perform, then you're also going to be able to build up the concept of, if you come here and you spend, and for so many of the open mics now, it's like $10 is like kind of like the average.
Really?
Huh?
Something like $15, $20.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, and okay, and I will be transparent. Like, I think that there are shows. It kind of depends on the market in your area, but there are shows that are like, that might be a $10 show. There's a lot of shows that I'm like, yeah, no thanks, boss. But yeah, it was just to say that I think that there's a level of like audience participation, or like audience like gravitational pull that you kind of have with your show. So like, yeah, just like you're saying, if people aren't in your area, aren't super interested, a lot of it might be because the show itself, it getting something started kind of starts with the poets. Because if people aren't gonna, like, let's go to my open mic and then just watch the host perform 10 poems, you kind of have to have a band of people that are there consistently, and in that way you can kind of get the people that would be there sporadically, and those are the ones that are going to be kind of filling up the seats.
It's tricky because I think when you look at a lot of the super successful open mics, like I know in San Antonio there was an open mic, there was on the half shell, which is also part of the poetry slam. I know they used to compete for that, which had pretty good turnouts. And then there was another open mic which I never attended, but like just looking at the pictures, I mean, they were regularly pulling in like 200 people, like just a ton of people there. But even like going back to like look at a lot of like your poetry, like your open mics are doing like poetry slam and things like that.
Yeah.
Not everyone there is a poet. And in fact, in a lot of these cases, most of the people there aren't actually poets, or most of the people aren't actually intending to even appear on stage. So I think that when this, so for instance, just kind of pulling up this comment again from James talking about how no one's interested. I think the key thing with like an open mic is, yeah, I mean, it's set up to showcase poetry, but I think when the key word there is showcase, which is the sense of entertainment, you have to be giving something that is valuable to people that even aren't, maybe not even remotely interested in poetry. They just want to have something fun to do. And the more that you're able to cater to that, I think the greater the chance that your show can succeed. Because if it's just an open mic that's geared entirely towards poets, the reality is that your mainstream audience doesn't really care.
Yeah.
It's just the interest in poetry is not.
Yeah, but it's just to say that like but kind of that stuff. I mean, and maybe it also depends on how you're starting your open mics, right? Because I'll say, for example, I mean, with diverses as well, but like with Seventh Draft, when we started Seventh Draft, it's legitimately it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's 5 poets already. So with 5 poets, you can make a show happen easily. You
Yep.
know what I mean? And so even if you don't have any other people sign on to the open mic, which we never really ran into that issue, but if you have no other person on that open mic list, it's like these 5 people are going to be able to give you a show. They're going to showcase new work that you're going to be entertained by. I think a lot of times people kind of start. There's been a couple open mics even in Columbus that the open mic started, and they didn't really have any kind of connections to the poetry community. They were just like they were and it's not even because I'm like the enterprising American spirit I'm all behind. Right, but it's just to say that there were people that are like, I just want to start this open mic, and I would hear about it maybe kind of by coincidence. Like I would like just search up like poetry in the area or something like that, just or like I would search it up on Instagram, or maybe something will pop up on my Instagram as a friend of a friend will have liked something, and I'm like, this is open mic, I've never seen it like before. And you kind of look at what the show is doing, and it's like the person that's running the show doesn't really have any kind of connections into the poetry community in Columbus. And because of that, now you have this show that is attempting to operate without bringing a show in, because like you have a host that's not really a poet, and then you have maybe a couple of people that aren't really poets. Like they maybe enjoy kind of getting on the mic, but it just like what you're saying, the audience that's coming, the audience that you are looking to kind of fill the seats or kind of bring people in, they're looking for like a show, you know what I mean? And an open mic, to be clear, an open mic can be a show whether it's good or bad. Like there's a lot of
more bad.
There's I was trying to not say I was trying not to say that, but there's a lot of open mics that the poetry can be entertaining even when your perceived quality of the poetry is not like the greatest quality of the poetry. Maybe, who the heck knows? But it's just to say that there is that potential, but it does come from, typically it's going to come from having some good poets, or at least some poets that people in your area believe are good.
I think it kind of goes back to just discussions about poetry where you're working on your poems. Like craft's important. Everything else, like if you're trying to get success from writing, it is assumed that there's a certain level of quality that's non-negotiable. But then after that, craft can't be the sole thing. So like after that, you have to have abilities to present your work in a way that's like palatable to an audience, whatever audience you're seeking. And so I think that's really the key with the open mics is the foundation itself is the poetry, but everything else around it, you have to be considering the presentation aspect, the entertainment aspect, the fact that poetry is what created this, and then people are coming for other aspects. They're coming for the entertainment aspect. They're coming to see it. They're coming to hear it. Nowadays, people are looking for things that they can share with other people. So I think if you're just having that element, like if you just have a poetry mic just for poets, that's really hard.
That's true.
That's really hard. Um, just to kind of bring up some things that came up as well. Um, I think this kind of highlights this very thing we're talking about. James saying that they've been the one in Dallas. What's the name of the one in Dallas? Let me know. It's like going to a comedy show. So again, comedy show. This is the you see a lot in Columbus. You see a lot of poetry open mics that are mixed with open mic music, comedy,
Yeah.
sometimes just controversial discussion. I'm not going to name names, but so you're seeing a lot of kind of like that aspect too. I think that's
Yeah.
also really tricky to pull off because I think poetry as a form, when you mix it with other forms like comedy and music, I think it often, unfortunately, kind of gets the shaft. Like it gets
Yeah.
kind of, it's easy for the other forms to kind of dominate. Like here, I'm going to read my 30-second poem, and now you're going to listen to this 4-minute song, or you're going to listen to this like 5-minute set, which also oftentimes is able to evoke emotion more strongly, I think, from a lot of audience members. So it's a difficult fight in
Yeah.
that mixed sort of open mic for poetry to survive. Not that it can't be done, but it's a hard
Yeah.
setup.
I think I don't know that I would say I've seen it done successfully
I have not
yet.
seen it done successfully, but I'm open. If you know of one that's name names, if you have a show, you're like, yo, they do everything here and they do it well.
I think there's probably some potential for an open mic that pretty much has like kind of a nondescript, and you're just like, you have 4 minutes to do whatever. So do whatever you want on your open mic. So that's kind of like a mixed bag. So that to me seems like there's typically some potential there because everybody's working with the same amount of time, and there's typically the same amount of kind of urgency to be able to do the work. And poetry just kind of takes the least barrier to entry when it comes to time to set up and do, because I can just get up on stage and I can do the poem. Whereas like somebody's doing a song, they typically have to set up their instruments, they have to set some things up. So if you take that away and you're saying you got to come up here and just do it, I think there's typically leaves a little bit more open for poetry to be able to be kind of not necessarily competitive in that space, because I think a good poem is going to be a good poem. It's going to be a good poem. But it's also, I just think that it's kind of like what's happening in this space is kind of important, because I'll say this. So this was years ago. I went to a show. I'm not going to name the city just in case the people that run this show see this podcast. But we went to a show years ago, and when we went to the show, essentially what happened was it was a comedy open mic and it was a poetry open mic. Now, the problem with that is that poems are not conversational pieces of content, right? They're not like I am telling my poem to you, whereas comedy is much more of a conversation. It's like a comedian says something, and then they can also riff on things that are happening with the audience and things like that. And I kid you not, at one point in the show, and the thing that they were doing, they were kind of going back and forth. So they would have a comedian, poet, comedian, poet, comedian, poet, comedian, poet, features that were poets that, again, and also the show went on. Everybody out there, if you're listening to this, if you take nothing else away from me, like, have a defined window of time for your show and make it like,
oh please,
not forever.
Please.
Like if
4 hours even.
If I see your flyer and your flyer is like, my open mic is 4.5 hours, I'm telling you, there's something's happening there that's taking too long. But yeah, so essentially, like, there just wasn't any kind of real distinct time set for the show. And this comedian got up there and he did, no lie, he's not on the flyer, he's not a host, he's not
you will get my feature.
He did a 45-minute set.
You will get,
and
Netflix is looking
and it was so interesting because it was like he did like a 45-minute set, but it also wasn't like it was like a set. It was like he started out with some jokes that I would imagine he's already written, and these are things. But then he started getting into the oh, what do y'all want to talk about? Say
Oh
something.
no, that's the worst.
And then I'm like, oh, we're locked in
That's the worst.
forever. So yeah, I mean, again, that's just another space where it's like, I think if it's a comedy space only, that's not only is that a little bit more defined, but I also think comedians have a culture in their spaces that would not allow that to happen. But the thing is, it was a poetry, like the host was a poet, and so they were like, people just do whatever you want to do.
Mhm.
But I'm like, if a poet got up there and did a 45-minute poem, it would never happen. You know what I mean? But comedy, it takes you a little bit more off guard, and it feels kind of like you don't know where to cut into it. And she didn't really want to cut into it, so we were just kind of stuck for 45 minutes.
I mean, that's all. That's the response. That's on the host. At that point, it's not even on the comedian. I mean, the comedians obviously can't read the
Yeah.
room, but that's on the. You gotta control your show.
Yeah, I mean that's that. No, but that's true. But it's also again, but I think it's the dynamics of the show were kind of important there, because when it comes to a poetry show, it's like it's it's fairly clear what's going to happen in a poetry show. And even if I'm like, if I go up there and say I have 10 poems to do, then you could easily say, oh no, like let's stop. But like if you say, oh, do 3 jokes, that's not you don't know what that can entail. So yeah, it's just to say that, like, I think like it's also important to be kind of tapped in with the culture of the art that you're kind of doing the open mic with. So your open mic, oh man, your your open mic scene probably has some people in it that are some OGs, some people that have been doing open mics or have been doing poetry for a while, or hopefully it does, and they're going to be able to kind of tap you in with some things to kind of do or keep in mind when running the open mic, or maybe you're one of those people, so you maybe already know. Whereas I think a lot of times poets just don't know that much about the comedy scene and what's happening in the comedy scene, or maybe what comedians are going to try to do in the comedy scene, because maybe you have no even idea how to be like, man, this set's been going on for 20 minutes, what do I do here? Like, you should stop it. You should stop it right now. Stop all your jokes. But yeah,
I mean, I think it's also just the headspace of the event you're creating. Like, if I'm going to a comedy poetry thing, even from an audience perspective, I have no idea what I'm in for. Like if I just go into a comedy thing, I know what I'm preparing for. I am paying you or watching you to laugh or to cringe at you, if it's amateur night. But I know what to expect. If it's a poetry open mic, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get poems. I might get a wide range of like emotional poems. The quality can be suspect, but I know I'm getting poems. Whereas like if I'm going to a poetry comedy thing, that's I'm a lot less prepared. I don't know quite as much how to handle that. But I think if you're trying to organize your thing, that's kind of sticking with one thing. I think is a beautiful thing to do. It's a beautiful thing. Prepares people, know what to expect, no surprises. I think that you also touched on an aspect of poetry mix. I was talking with Christoph from the Poet Life.
Shout out to
we actually had some recent streams on each other. Yeah, clap it up for put it into work. So check that out on his channel, The Poet Life, and also ours. We did a couple things. And one of the things he brought up is that, with open mics, it's also really key to have a plan. And I think one of the things you mentioned was people kind of just starting up open mics just because of it's the cool thing to do. Like, I'm going to start my open mic. This is my show. You know what I mean? So they're doing it out of ego, or they're just doing it maybe because they're not even tapped into the community. I mean, we've seen it happen where, Columbus, where we are, there was a time when there was an open mic every single night of the week. And then people would be double booked. Like, people would be scheduling new open mics on nights when they're already open mics. So then it's like a question of, are you tapped into the community? You know what's going on? What is your show serving? That's a question mark. What literally, what is your show serving? What's the plan here? And I think if the goal is just to do an open mic, just do an open mic. I personally would kind of encourage you to sit down and think more about what you want this show to be doing.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really big kind of flaw in strategy, when you think about how, kind of people kind of either create their open mics or really maintain their open mics, because a lot of
Yeah.
people, they'll start an open mic and they'll be doing it, like you can hold on to an open mic for a really long time that's not successful, right? So you in not even not successful in the whether or not it's successful is like being big or whatever, but it's not serving a purpose. So I'll say, like, let's take for example, writer's block, that
It's a show in Columbus.
show in Columbus last year. It had its last show in December. It was December last year, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Last year.
It's been years
But
ago now.
it had been running for 20, 21, 22, some
It was like
25.
21 years for like 5 years in a row. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to say, but yeah.
Yeah. So what? Over 20 years, right? So essentially, as long as most of the poets were working poets or were poets in Columbus, there was a show on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. that that started at 8 and went until whenever Scott said it was no longer happening, right? And so I think that you take something like that where it's like, okay, you know that that's happening. So if you're going to start a show on Wednesday at 8, you should ask yourself, like, why am I starting the show Wednesday at 8? Because there is a show right now that I could go to that's at Wednesday at 8. And if you're saying, hey, which I'm going to make the argument, and hopefully nobody, it's not to be offensive to anybody, right? Just to say that, like, if you're going to start a show on Wednesday, a lot of people are like, oh, like they see the bag in it, right? They see the potential to be able to bring in some money from this venture, right? And so you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to absolutely start this open mic. I'm going to get $7-10 a head and whatever. The thing that I'm telling you is going to happen is that you're putting the potential for money ahead of the service that you're providing, or that you should be providing to the community. And because of that, if you're not providing the service, then you're not going to get the money, right? And it shouldn't be about, it should not be like the first thing that's happening should not be, man, I'm trying to figure out how much money to get. It should be, what are my metrics for success of this thing that aren't the dollars and cents of it. And maybe the dollars and cents of it are things that make it keep going, but they shouldn't be the things that should make you start it. And I just think that, like, and it's also like, and it's not even necessarily competing, because again, if you were like, man, if the problem was that every Wednesday night there was 50-60 poets that could not get into writer's block, that was just so packed, which is like,
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's a beautiful problem to have, right? But it's also like, if you're sensing that in the community, and there's always people that just really wanted to be able to get into an open mic, and then you're like, man, I really want to create something that that way this underserviced population of people that, like, maybe they're like, man, I'm not going to go like writer's block because at Cafe Kerouac, so maybe that's on one side of town. So maybe you're like, well, if you go further north, there's this other spot that's an open mic, and maybe it's kind of provides a little bit of a different vibe. But now you have all these poets that are displaced. They're like, oh, I can go over here. Maybe that thins it out a little bit. Maybe you both grow with the same like some kind of attrition there, or some kind of traction there. But it's just to say that, yeah, just exactly what you're saying. Like, you got to figure out if you're actually serving a purpose in creating your open mic, and be honest with yourself about what the point of the open mic is. Because maybe it is like the money, and I'm like, if it is the money, if you're just thinking about the money, then like, just, you have to be very, very careful to not be careless about the things that you're doing, because like, you're not going to get it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, money is a byproduct of doing something well that resonates and helps other people.
Right.
Like, to make money to focus was really, that doesn't serve people.
For
How
sure.
you're helping people is the thing. I also want to touch on a point that you mentioned about, if you're organizing a show, thinking about the audience and the time. So you mentioned it again. If you're organizing a show at, like, for instance, 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, who's coming out to a show at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday? You can also be able to think about who's not coming. So if you're doing a show at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, most likely you're not getting your parents. So like you're talking, I would say like your 28 to like 35 audience becomes kind of difficult. Not impossible. You can make things work. There were shows I was able to go to, but I will also put it this way too. Like before we had our kid, it was much easier for me to go to shows regularly versus when they were born. Then, oh well, instead of going every week, now I'm going once a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's or the other things too, like the location. I was talking with them. So I started a poetry WhatsApp group, just like it's just basically like a poetry calendar, but on WhatsApp. So in that, I'm just like letting people know about poetry events that are happening. And this one guy was talking to me about, hey, he's trying to maybe start an event, and he names this side of town he wants to put it in. And I'm like, my God, man, you're putting this like way out. I'm already on the west side of Columbus. He's putting out even like farther west. First of all, the west side, I'm going to throw out some specific information about my neighborhood, just to kind of give you an idea of things that you can kind of apply if you're thinking about.
I'll type his address into the chat so everybody can know.
Credit card numbers are there,
and his social security it starts with these. Guess the rest.
Yeah. And James is mentioning too, don't go out late. So you're losing James. If you plan it like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, you're losing James. But anyway, so this guy's like playing like even farther out west side of Columbus. The poets in general, like the super active poets in the poetry community, don't live on the west side. A lot of them are closer to downtown, north side, or like if you guys are familiar, like Ohio State, kind of like that area, which is more like, again, north, slightly north is probably just north, and also maybe east side. West side doesn't have a whole lot going on, which we'll also want to touch on when we talk about our own open mic. So that's already going to be slightly problematic. But he's also talking about a part of town where not a lot of sidewalks, so you don't get foot traffic. You're mostly talking it's kind of this weird mix of like industrial, commercial, and residential. So like there's not the demographics, like who's going to be able to get there. It's just really, really hard. So like even just choosing a location, locations that tend to do well for open mics, downtown locations that people can get to easily, where hopefully parking is accessible, cheap, or it's easy to get there by public. College campuses, writer's block, for instance, extremely benefited by being close to OSU. It was on a part of campus that was slightly more residential, little neighborhood. So you also get some of the neighborhood community getting involved too.
It's like it was right on High Street. If you don't know a lot about Columbus, like High Street is it's really busy and it's really accessible.
Sorry.
Okay. It's really accessible like through Coda. So essentially you have multiple buses that run straight up and down that route, and so it's super accessible by that metric as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally have a car. My wife has a car. I don't have a car, so I would take the bus, like sometimes, and things like that. So these are things you want to be thinking about. And maybe that's not the demographic you want. Maybe you're looking for an older audience or a younger, like, I don't know. Maybe you want to work with like there's like youth open mics and things like that. So like these are all things that you want to be considering, and your time's gonna be really important. If you're trying to do a youth open mic, for like young teens, a 9 o'clock open mic is probably not going to be the best idea.
Not at all.
You're probably thinking, oh, maybe like afternoon on a weekend or something like that. So like, and even just like look at like an easy way. If you're not sure what it is, look at what other events are happening, like literary events are happening, and see what those times are. Because if you're noticing, oh, all these events are happening at like 7 o'clock. Okay, well maybe that's a sign that that's a good time. Or if you're like, oh, all these like events are happening in the afternoon. Like I know, for instance, for like the like high school like poetry competitions, a lot of those again weekends, afternoons.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're done by like 2 o'clock. So these are things you want to be thinking about. But so Matthias, to get to us. So we used to have an open mic. I think this is how we started when 35 minutes.
Diversus poetry.
We had an open mic. And I see James mentioning again, location. Yes, with the correct times. That's a whole other thing. So we used to have an open mic. We went on hiatus when like the spring, summer.
Yeah,
something like that. So I've been kind of putting some feelers out, and I'm thinking in the new year of reviving the Diverses open mic.
We should do it for sure.
Let's clap it up.
Let's clap it
up. We can also boo.
We're clapping up the thing, and then we're booing Jeff missing the button. So I'm going to let you know which one is.
You can let us know. Oh, and they say, hey.
Wait, what's her name? Hold on. It's Ajane Dawkins.
AJ
Ane. Man, thank you so much. Really great profile picture, Ajane. Man, I just, it's really good contrast that's kind of going on there. I really like how the chair, look like a green chair maybe, is just kind of contrasting with the white background. Looks nice. I hope that you're doing. Where are you located, Ajane? Like, what city are you out of?
You trying to get her number?
Maybe. I mean, let's just figure out how. We'll see how this goes. Whoa, ma'am. Hey, I'm married. Hey, whoa, this joke's maybe been going too far. Ma'am, I am wed, so I just don't want to. If my wife is out there that's watching this, I just wanted you to know that, hey, this viewer just took it a little too far. Okay, I don't know what this viewer is all about. I just really
not just his body.
Exactly.
Please,
ma'am, I am a poet. Please. Okay, please respect my mind.
It's good to see. I just think at your house.
Whoa, man.
Thanks for the kind words on the show, Aja. So we used to have an open mic. We went on hiatus. I'm thinking about bringing it back. I was getting an idea for people for times. I think. Let me know what your thoughts are on the show. I think the first run of the show, I was very gung-ho on making the show kind of like for poets, by poets. We're really dedicated to that. I don't think I was paying enough attention to the other kind of entertainment sort of aspects that I think a show needs.
Yeah, I think the first run, the first iteration of Diverses was kind of really centered around building artists, and I think to be clear, I think it's something that's needed, right? So I think like the mechanism that it was attempting to do is absolutely something that's needed. But you're right, I think that there was a thing where we're the entertainment value for the typical person that is not a poet, that's just maybe here to like watch poems, like maybe they don't get a lot out of the education and out of like the other parts that we're implementing, as much as they're just like, I just want to come and see a show happen in front of me. Right.
And I think that's like when you look at a lot of businesses, and that's one of the things too with the show is that I think I was missing this. When you look at a lot of businesses, they have something that they provide that's, it's like a loss driver. So it's something that typically they're giving out for free, or that's really inexpensive, like for someone to get, even if the company itself has to throw money at it in a way, like money or time. It's like, hey, I have to make myself available for this, or I have to create this product for people to get, to draw in people, right? Draw in interest, So I think something moving forward, going back with the show, is that I would kind of approach the mic more from that perspective, where it's like, hey, the goal is less about every single person coming in really focusing on the poetry aspect, and more focusing on just, hey, like, we're doing poetry tonight. Have fun, let's enjoy ourselves. Let's get poetry out there. And then if you're also interested in other opportunities, well, we have this whole platform, with the Verses, where you can also get if you're more serious about the poetry stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of, I think the working or the work associated. Oh. The work associated with like having and this is also something that shout out to uh JG I was about to call him John. Shout out to JG the Juggernaut. He is a Emmy award winning which here's the thing, because he doesn't say that enough when he like just he does not say that enough times.
Carrying that trophy everywhere.
Right, it's so weird to me that I'm like, I'd be like talking to him like, that's like, first of all, like
trophy would be like right there.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so here's the thing, like, so like when I say like JG is like my brother. Like JG was like like Jeff and JG were both in my wedding, right? So like these are things like me and JG are close. What I be telling JG, I'm like, JG, you have an Emmy, okay? So like here's the thing, like we need to figure out a way to like really publicize this on a level that we're not doing it right. Like we need the, hey, I have an Emmy, to be like, that's your handshake, right? In a way, which is all just to say that, like, you know, I remember, you know, shout out. So I was going to say, like, with respect to things, and there's a December 14th, the Nest open mic is going to be coming back. You'll see it on my stuff. You'll see it on the Nest OME on Instagram. So we'll see some promo and stuff like that going up for it. So shout out to that. But just to say that the like one of the things that was always really, really clear about the Nest is that JG would make sure that the people that are I guess I would say like regulars, or just like, because we're also family, so it's not even just like we're just like all poets, like we're all like family, like, you know, me, JG, Trip, Jaleisha, Tasha, all of us, like we're all close. So it wasn't even just like, you know, we're all just like poets, like we're all like close people. But like like we all work, like Janelle as well, shout out to Janelle. But like, you know, we're always working on our poems. We're always like kind of work. I don't think it was necessarily as formal as like, you know, kind of a formal presentation, as far as like, which I think if we had it, I think we would be able to scale it better, because as it was just like we liked each other's poems, but we also liked each other. We're all good. We're all good people with each other. So it was like, it was a little bit maybe different because we were just all coming together kind of organically. But if there was like a Nest open mic training program, that I'm training, that's a little much. But if there was like a way for people to actually kind of like formalize that coming in, and like let's work on your poem, let's all kind of create a community, which we kind of tried in some instances, but the show, you would never know it, right? In the course of the show, that's not even something that you have an understanding of. These are people that are coming in and they're watching the show happen, right? But really what's happening in the background is like, I probably like the first time I did the Denzel poem was the first time JG, like the first time I did the Denzel poem was at the Nest, right? And when JG saw the poem, JG looks at the poem and JG says, that's a really good poem, we need to work on that poem. And we worked on the we worked on the poem. It was fighting me back. It hit me first. That's what you guys gotta understand.
I told you.
But yeah, so we worked on the poem, and not only did we work on the poem, we worked on like, okay, like what are the reasons why you believe, like you feel like this poem works, or what works about this poem. And I don't know, there's a recording of it out there somewhere, I'm pretty sure, of the first time I ever performed the Denzel poem. I want y'all to know, right now, the Denzel poem is like a minute and 48 to 50 seconds, depending on like how aggressive I can be with it, right? Its original iteration was like 4 minutes long. Okay. It's much better. It's a much better poem as it is today than it was when it started. And that's a byproduct of something that happened fairly organically, that, you know, I think that's like it's something that like you should try to do as a poetry show, right? You should be able to say like, oh, like this person is really serious. I mean, and to be clear, the Denzel poem wasn't the point where it happened. Like it happened years before that. But it's just saying like the Denzel poem is a beneficiary of that product, that process, which is like, hey, we already have this thing where JG, like if I do a poem, JG's gonna have
Mhm.
at some point gonna have his eyes on the actual poem itself, like it in writing,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that that's a really important thing to happen at an open mic, and not for everybody, because not everybody's looking for that.
Right.
And I
Most
think
people aren't.
kind of the thing that happened, I think with Diverses, is that it kind of implied that everybody's looking for that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's like that also is going to whittle down the people
Right.
that,
Yeah.
because it's not even going to just be people that like to perform. It's gonna now it's like the only people that we're appealing to is people that want to perform and that are also looking to work on their poems, which
Mhm.
is like a much smaller subset
Mhm.
of people than
Mhm.
even the people that are just
Mhm.
poets that are working on poems.
Yeah.
um
Right.
which is just kind of to add on what you were saying, like, you know, the work associated with, you know, I think like the one of the bigger missions of Diverses, which is, you know, making poets better, but then also that that leading off into poets being able to eat off of their work,
Mhm.
like that part probably doesn't happen in the front facing
Right.
part
Right.
of
No.
the open mic
No.
experience.
No. My approach now is definitely more. I'm thinking ecosystem. So the open
Mm,
mic is one arm. You bring in that's your joint. It's kind of like, for instance, like with like sort of like YouTube. Like YouTube, you see a video, you may have never seen that person before. You check out the video, you're like, oh, this is cool. I'm vibing with this, and then like you dig more into the person, and then like the more you see it, the more you get involved. You're like, oh, they do this. I want to get involved with this too. Like it kind of just builds, builds, builds.
for sure.
Or you see it and you're like, okay, like I'll check out their videos every now and then, but it's not, my thing. I think that that's kind of the approach. It's the introductory vehicle. It's the entrance into the ecosystem, and then as we can offer other things off of that. And I think this is where a lot of other people that are just kind of starting our open mics, they're just thinking the open mic for the open mic.
Yeah.
Whereas, and again, is that can certainly, that's fine. The open mic is just all, is that's the end all be all, okay. But I think you're setting yourself up for an opportunity for to build off of. Like, no, the open mic is something that, in marketing terms, is like that's kind of that's the start to the funnel. And then if people want to dive into other things, then like, hey, we're also doing this. If you guys are really interested in poetry, by the way, we're doing this workshop this weekend, and things like that. So I think that's really key. There's a couple other issues that I think were challenges. So the original open mic we had was a Tuesday. It was pretty much the time we just kind of switched over to the podcast. 8:39 p.m. on a Tuesday, I think is a tricky time for people. I think another thing too is we're located on the west side. I mentioned earlier about the guy that wanted to start a new show. That trying to in the process of kind of talking him out of, or at least different locations. So I think that this side of Columbus artistically doesn't have the same sorts of events happening that occur in other parts of the city. And so, it takes a long time to train people that aren't used to it. This
Yeah.
is a part of town that's relatively like kind of sleepy. Like everyone kind of just doing their own thing. Like a lot of people on the west side stay on the west side. A lot of people from other parts of Columbus don't go to the west side. A lot of people don't venture like 15 minutes like west of where we are right now. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of obstacles like that I think made our goal a little bit more challenging. So the times we're considering right now, instead of doing like a Tuesday night, one a little earlier in the evening. So maybe something more like 7:30 ish. In terms of times, the days I'm thinking right now would probably be more like a Friday or a Sunday. I think those are probably a little bit more accessible points for people to engage with. Also, just those are also the times when people are looking for entertainment sorts of things to do, and poetry could be that thing.
Yeah. I really enjoy as far as like time slots for open mics. I think Sunday open mics are really appealing to me, especially Sundays that because it's like I don't say for everybody, but for myself personally, it's like I typically maybe have like one thing on the agenda for Sunday, which is like maybe like church, right? And so if it's happening outside of the scope of like that window of time, I typically don't have a lot of other things planned because I'm like kind of getting stuff ready for my days or ready for my week. So if I could have something in a a 2 hour, 2.5 hour time slot in my day that is not me like it's not me doing other things, it's me actually being able to take in content and be able to watch something and be kind of entertained, like that'd be good. So I mean, I don't know, Sunday feels right, but also Fridays I think have its own appeal because it's like at the end of the week, and so maybe it's like kind of your decompress space, and so kind of both work.
I'm leaning more Friday. I think Sunday, again, I'm thinking of routines. It's so hard to break into people's routines. Like I said earlier, like people already had their things that they're doing. And anytime you introduce something new, you're asking people to get out of something that they've already established. I think if people are more likely to go out, they're more likely to go out on a Friday night than on a Sunday night. So that's the first thing. I think it's harder to get people, and I could be way wrong on this, but I'm kind of hypothesizing, so we can kind of break this down together. But I'm hypothesizing that it would be harder to get people to leave their homes, especially the months we're entering right now. So we're in Ohio. It's cold. Today was 20 degrees. It was like 25 degrees. It's dark. It's gray. It's going to be like this until May.
Don't say that. Unless global warming kicks in, which, I'm not saying I want the world to melt, but I'm saying, but like just during the next couple months, like a little melt. It's like a little bit melt.
I think that makes Sunday really challenging. That's not to say it can't be done. Like I think that it is the weekend, so that works to an advantage. But it's also the day before work. So I think some people might be like, I just want to hang in tonight because I have to go to work tomorrow for most people. Whereas I think Friday is a great day because Friday you did the work and you also get the weekend at the same time. You know what I mean? Like a Friday night, because like, oh man, I have Saturday and Sunday and tonight. That's why I'm personally leaning Friday.
That's fair.
Although I think something that would be cool in the future. I'm scared to try it, but like,
I think we should create a third dimension in space and time, and then host our open mic inside of that dimensional portal.
Do you think it would work?
I think that's the only. Then you don't have to, like, you just use your brain to enter into the portal.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't use my
brain. Well, you just got to train your audience to use the portals. Train your audience to use the portals.
A morning mic. Like a brunch mic. You start some cantaloupe and read a poem.
Gotta have some brunch food. Gotta have some mimosas.
But I'm okay with that. There's a business expense.
Throw some mimosas.
Or you know what you could do? Right now, I'm not doing this, but I'm just thinking like long term because no one does a morning mic. James says this sounds like to be. I don't have a sound effect for that. All I have is a warning. I've never heard of a morning mic or a brunch mic. I've never heard of that before.
I could probably get behind. I think a brunch mic sounds like if you.
I mean, no one's showing up to a 9 a.m. mic.
Yeah. Yeah, like a brunch mic sounds pretty solid. Like but, I think I can imagine people being like, "Oh, brunch and poetry. That's that's a good I think it's a good combo."
I have to think of you'd have to think of a good name for that. Brunch poetry is okay, but I think we could think of a better name. But yeah, like imagine you brought like some fruit trays or something like that. You could charge people like, hey, the open mic itself is free, but if you want a plate, $5 or something like that. You know what I mean?
That'd be interesting.
So it's a concept I have. It's something I'm playing. So the open mic that we're gonna do is not gonna be this. At least not yet. This is further down the line, but it's something I want to experiment with in the future because one, I've never heard of a mic doing that before, and two, I also think that could also open you up to a whole new audience because now you might be able to get families, because like night mics, you can't really bring your kids and things like that to that, The other advantage is that they like brunch, Let's go. Get our chicken and waffles on. Food. Most open mics don't really have food, and breakfast food is much cheaper than dinner food. You know.
I never really thought about it. I guess you're right.
You know. So it's like I don't.
I feel like I can never.
I'm talking myself into doing this, and I don't want to do this.
Either I'm talking myself into doing this, or I really want brunch right now.
It's my favorite meal.
Brunch is your favorite meal?
Breakfast is, but I'll compromise.
I think breakfast, Junior.
I mean, when I go to brunch, I get breakfast food. I don't get a sandwich. I like brunch.
We went to a diner
Cool.
Sunday in New York, and they had a chorizo burger, and it felt so weird because I was like eating like a chorizo. It was a hamburger. It's like actually a hamburger that had chorizo on it. That's neither here nor there.
Man.
But it was like
memories.
But it was that. But then like my sister like was like right next to me eating like a plate of pancakes.
That's the power of brunch.
Everything
man.
all at
That's
once.
the power of brunch.
Like what is that movie? Everything all at once all the time or something like that.
That's the power of brunch. That was a great moment. But that's when we were in San Antonio, there's a brewery called Blue Star Brewery. They changed ownership and stuff like that, and unfortunately did that while we were down there, which is really disappointing because originally the original owners it was a brisket burger. So it was a hamburger topped with brisket. And oh my gosh, it was so good. It was so delicious. It was like the best burger. I'm not even a burger person. Listen, and that was so good.
This might be a contentious comment to say on YouTube, and I might regret. You might cancel me after I say this, and so I'm sorry if I'm gonna get canceled for this. But you know, Arby's has a brisket burger. All right, man. All I'm saying, I'm not saying that Arby's, if you're out there,
shoot that thing. No, he was telling me.
It doesn't matter to me. Okay. Do you think I'm back there in the kitchen with any of these chefs trying to monitor what they got going on?
It would be the wildest things. Like the roast beef comes in a plastic bag of liquid plastic, like it's liquid. And he said you cook it.
Delicious.
It turns into like this solid thing. It's
hey,
like,
that's okay. That's a modern marvel. Okay, so let's not back away from that.
Not to eat modern marvel.
Let's lean into that and figure out how we could do that for more things in the future. Sorry, James.
We got.
I'm so sorry, James. I'm sorry. Hey, shout out to Ibri. If you're still watching, shout out to Ibri, a super dope artist here in Cologne. Ibri, okay, listen. Okay, I really hope that we're still on to work together on some projects after my Arby's comments. I am sorry if that rubbed you the wrong way, if that was offensive. I just want you to understand that. I'm not endorsing Arby's. Okay, this is not me endorsing Arby's.
Not endorsing.
I'm not endorsing it because what you just described, which is a liquid turning into a solid, turning into a sandwich. I don't know. I got to invest.
We were gods.
What have we done? It was us. It was us the whole time.
Open mics.
No, I want to go to Planet of the Apes now. I want to fast forward.
So those were some of the things that I think were major.
Oh, hey, yeah, James. Yeah, welcome back, James. Welcome back to the fold. We missed you.
James wrote that they actually like their wraps.
See? Yeah,
know.
James. So it's 2 against 1 now.
It's just like bacon wrapped roast beef. Is that an Arby's wrap? Because all I know is
what if like the wrap was roast beef?
Bacon wrapped roast beef
and a Jamocha shake on the side, just for good measure. That's for you, citizen.
So those are the challenges that I think our original open mic kind of ran into, and I think the other thing too is that, and this is something that Christoph mentioned, we got into the talk about open mics, is that taking the time to kind of just debrief, after these things, talk about what's going on and things like that. Something that I want to experiment. So, like I said, I'm leaning Friday. I need to talk with Third Way. I talked with them briefly. They want to do it. People are still bringing in Arby's stuff. I'm no longer acknowledging Arby's content.
Let's make this into an Arby's channel. We endorse Arby's channels. Say it with your chest. We could do an open mic at Arby's.
So just talk with Chris about taking the time to debrief, talk about how things are going, but I also want to apply some more things just from like marketing and things like that. So one of the things I'm tapping into, first of all, like I said, we created the WhatsApp group for poetry events. That way we can let people know we're a resource for the city, but then we can also, when we post our own events, lets people know who are interested. Because if you're joining a WhatsApp group for poetry events, you're interested in poetry events, So hopefully it's drawing in people that are interested in those sorts of things. That's one of the things. Firstly, one of the things that you mentioned before you attended that open mic, I forget, it was what, serpents and snakes and
Apples and snakes.
apples and snakes. And one of the things they had was limited mic, and that's something I really want to embrace, because I think that one key aspect of successful events is the idea of limitations. We talked about writers block, for instance. There were times, especially their last year, as they were getting ready to shut down, you literally couldn't go in. You had to wait for people to leave because the room was literally packed. Oh my gosh, you're still going. I'll let you read that. The idea of limitations is so powerful. It creates tension. People act out of tension. When people buy things, they're buying things out of tension. When people go to things, they're going to things out of tension. So I like that aspect of a limited mic. So I'm really thinking that for us, that's probably something I'd like to embrace. Setting a cap, 10 poets. If it's under 10, cool. If it's over 10, sorry, next time. That's something I think that's a solid number. That's something I really want to embrace. Something else I'm toying with idea of as well is like reserving a couple of spots on the mic to people who like reply online or something like that.
That's right.
So it's like reserving, hey, 3 spots. If you want to join it, like tomorrow at 8:00, I'm going to open up the sign up sheet online on like Facebook or something like that. Be the first 3 people to respond. You're guaranteed a spot at the mic, something like that. And it's not a strategy I see a lot of mics doing, because a lot of mics definitely are more like, day of the event, you walk through the door, you sign up for the list there. So I think that's one way that you can also start to create a little bit of that tension, but also because another key aspect with tension is transparency. Like, for instance, the super easy example, like the restaurant that has the line out the door.
Yeah.
And the food may not even be like, you're walking by, like, what's so special about this restaurant versus any other restaurant, right? And then like next door to that restaurant, there'll be another restaurant that's like completely empty. And it might be the same exact food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The advantage and disadvantage for that restaurant is the transparency factor. People are drawn to things that they see other people are interested in. And then if you're also like, oh, this is limited, then those two things combined, if you have transparency plus tension that are together, that's when you're able to kind of really push things a lot further. So those are things that I really want to experiment with more. Previously, we were definitely more open. It's like, hey, you show up, you want to read, cool, and things like that. But I think those having sorts of limitations, I think, are really key. As this is not an Arby's comment, so this is acceptable. People love limited editions. Facts.
The next comment is like the limited edition bacon, lettuce, and roast beef sandwich from Arby's. But yeah, I think there's absolutely something to that. But I also think about like even in the example of like writer's block, the tension was more or less kind of, it was organic because it wasn't a matter of kind of creating it so it supposes attention. It's like there was a legit problem with you could not have more people in the room, right? So, and I bring it back to even like the first thing we were talking about, like apples and snakes. That I think apples and snakes is who was putting on the open mic. So I don't know if that was the name of the open mic.
Okay.
So I have to search. If anybody's been to London, has been to that, I could probably look it up later. I have a picture of it on my Twitter somewhere. But essentially, that open mic what was so, and again, I mean, by the time when we went to it, naturally had been existing for years, right? So it's not like we went to its first one. But what was so cool about that space is that it the and I don't know. I mean, I'm not part of the creative team that was like building it up, but I'm just thinking from like the aspect of like like from like the perspective maybe of an organizer. Like maybe you don't necessarily start with the concept of like what essentially what they did was you came in and if you wanted to be on the open mic list, you signed your name on the list, or actually you signed your name on this little piece of paper. And when you signed your name on the little, actually, yeah, you signed your name on the, actually you signed your name on the list, and then the organizers, like there was two people at the table, and then they would sign that name on this piece of paper, and they would put the paper into this bowl, right? And then the host, man, I keep hitting this thing. The host essentially would go up to like when the show starts, and when the show starts, nobody knows who's performing what, but there's only 10 open mic slots that are available for the entirety of the show. There's 5 that happen before the features, and then there's like 3 features that happen. There was like 3 or 4, I can't remember. I think maybe it was 3. And then after the features go, there's another 5 open mic slots. And I think the thing that was so kind of cool about that is that it was random. So it's not about whether the host likes you or whatever the situation is. It was legitimately, and the thing that I also take about, it wasn't even about time, right? So it's like you could come here, you could be the last person to sign up, and you could be one of the people that perform. Right. And so I think it's also kind of getting everybody on the same page with that. Like, you could be here on time and everything, but you also might not perform. Right. And to be clear, 10 people performed. I think there had to be like 70 some odd people on that list. Like it was a lot. And it was a lot more people that just were there to enjoy the show. Right. This, like, it was really, really bizarre to me as an open mic, like what I typically see open mics, right. Especially in the States. So it was kind of bizarre to see so many people at an open mic, and then B, so many people that were like, yeah, the tension came from, you don't know who these 5 people are, so you don't know what you're about to get. And it's like, it's this feeling of like, it could be you, because if you go to another open mic, it's like the it could be you is only a feeling that applies to, it could be you now, but it's going to be you at some point, right? And then depending on the kind of open mic you go to, because some of them they choose directly from like the run of the list, and so if you sign up and you're the number 1, then you're going up first. But then there's a lot of open mics that are just they're gonna pick randomly around the list, but you always know that if you're on that list, you're gonna go up unless something happens and they run out of time. So like, yeah, there it was like, there was 70 some odd people on the list. You're not getting to all those people whatsoever, but they could probably, like, who the heck knows? It doesn't matter. But they were like, this show only has 10 open mic slots, and that was a decision that was made regardless of how many people are sign up on the list. And so if literally 10 people came up, then your name's gonna get pulled and you're gonna be good. But if again 70 some odd people sign up on the list, then that's 10 of those people are going to go up. And so, yeah, like that tension felt like it was created kind of organically, but it's kind of hard to tell like kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, did they do that and then people will just kind of flood it in because of that tension? I don't know. I would probably make the argument that mechanism was probably created, some genius somewhere created that mechanism. Like that's brilliant.
Man who invented roast beef.
See, it's irresistible. He can't even help but bring it up. Arby's, so sponsor. I'll wear the Arby's hat during the stream. Okay, like I'll do it. But yeah, like Arby's had like a sandwich that had like a hash brown in the middle. So I just
do that.
I just want to put out there, that's brilliant stuff. But yeah, so it's just to say that there is this again, there's this like tension of you not knowing what's going to happen, but it's also like, so me and my wife, like we were like, naturally we were coming from here, so it's like, it's a really new kind of open mic space for us, but then B, like, what are the odds that one of us gets called up to perform? Like, not high, right? It's like we got the same odds as any other one person, but like we're coming from the same. So like the fact that I was a call, like this is super exciting. And I was like one of the last. So like there was like 5 people that went up first, and then I was one of the last 5 people that like went up
Mm-hmm.
like at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a really cool experience, and I think something like that. I don't know. I mean, it might be hard to kind of do that with a uh without having the audience to match it first. So I just don't know which one came first, but I would imagine being like, at some point, if you're like, 50 people want to be on your open mic list. Okay. If you transition it
Mm-hmm.
over to this type of open mic, then, if you're a
Mm-hmm.
host out there, you could probably put
I
your
think.
finger on the scales at some point, but I think it felt supernatural and really
Mm-hmm.
organic, to be in that space.
I think you have to base it on. I mean, there's kind of a formula you can use for this. Like, you need like signals of interest. You need a certain number of people to express interest in the thing, and then in general, the space you base on that is usually, 5, a fifth of that or a tenth of that.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have 50 people, 10. If you have 40 people, 8, and kind of like moving on from there. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's something that, once we actually launch, that's something I'm going to be kind of paying attention to.
Yeah. And it's also one of the things to consider is like what you feel like people are paying the admission for.
So that's I
Because
don't speak it. Just sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
I'm still deciding on fee. I'm trying to decide: are we going to charge or be free? I'm still deciding on that.
Well, no, so just in like a larger
Mhm.
concept, right? So like I think one of the things at the very least, I'll say like about a lot of like Columbus open mics, and that's not to say like some of the how would you put it? Maybe the legacy ones. I mean, there's not a lot of those
Not a lot
around
of
anymore.
anymore.
But like when there was the kind of legacy ones that were around, and even with some of the ones that are happening right now, like what are people paying the price of admission for, and kind of actually training your audience
Okay.
to understand like, okay, like what's happening here, because I guess at least for everybody that was going to Apples and Steaks, like they were like, it was worth my money regardless if I performed.
Mm-hmm.
It was worth it to be in the space to cheer on my friends, to cheer on these poets that are getting. There's like a couple of people that had never been on the open mic list before, so bam, now like they're cheering them on. They loved the features, and so they enjoyed the show. So also there's like some production that's kind of needed, because it was a beautiful show. I want to be really clear. Shout out to that show. Shout out to the host. Shout out to everybody that's part of that, because like that was a beautifully ran show, beautiful venue, beautiful energies, all that good stuff was really super present in that space. But it was just to say that like in that capacity, like people were, and I don't know, I can't remember what it translates to, but I think it was like something around like $10 or something like that. It was like a little bit more than $10 for admission to that show. And it was more than worth it. Like, and like I think everybody there already understood it's more than worth it, right? Whereas I think a lot of shows, and again, this is also kind of you as a show, you should be trying to create an experience that is good enough that if somebody was not a performer, that they would enjoy your show. Because now you have a group of people, because again, those people, regardless, more than likely they're not performing. You know what I mean? Like they understood, like with as many people as on the list, more than likely they're not going to get on the list, but they still paid that money. And there's a lot of people, if you gave them those same odds in our poetry show ecosystem, would be like, oh, I have a 10% chance of performing on this open mic. I'm not going to go. Because they're what they're paying for, what they are paying for. So the thing that they're giving you their money for, what they are believing they're buying is the opportunity to perform, or they're buying not the opportunity to perform, they're buying the guarantee of performing on stage.
Yeah.
And I think that show sells them on, you're going to get a great show and you might be part of it. Like, who knows? But we're going to give you a great show. So I think that should also be a goal if you're going to kind of go into a format of because unless you're gonna make it clear like online somewhere, like, hey, if you're on your way to the open mic, just to let you know the open mic just closed. Then like by the time they get to your show, it's like, hopefully they go up to the mic and they say, oh, or they go up to this and they say, oh, it's full, but I still want to see a show. Hopefully that it's like that. But I fear that there's a lot of poets that would feel otherwise. But
And that's why I'd want to make it clear from the beginning, like limited open mic, like very limited. Because I don't want there to be any surprises.
Yeah.
Something else that I was also thinking of doing. Oh, I want to highlight just James. Yeah, and James highlights something that happens a lot too, where you have a mic, seems like it's doing everything right, and then one day, gone. Yeah, I mean, there can be cycles and trends and things like that during the year where more people are going to show up, less people are going to show up. At writer's block, the shows that were largest tended to be during the same months when school was in session. When Ohio State was out in general, attendance was a little bit lower. And they planned for it, and they expected that. So knowing the cycles, this goes back to how well do you know the people go into your show in their cadences and their rhythms, because those are things you want to factor too. Can also be a sign that you're not innovating. Can also be a sign that something's not working. But it could also just be this. It could be that you're doing everything right. It's just, again, just the time.
Yeah. And I think that's like kind of a hard thing to figure out what to stick with and when to stick with what you're doing. And that can really kind of be for anything that you're doing on a consistent level.
100%.
Like, if you're working at, I know like right now I'm doing a lot of video, like, short films and things like that. And so, it'd be easy to be like, something didn't perform well. So like, man, should I stop making short films? Like, probably not. Like maybe maybe that's just, that's just like what you should do. Or like maybe when it comes to like, and even when we're talking about right now, like when it comes to poems, like I think probably a really quick example of this is just your poems on the open mic. I think a lot of people, they perform for the first time. And what a lot of people don't know is that if the host gets up there and says, hey, this is this person's first time ever performing a poem ever, like people are going to cheer for you a lot harder after you get done doing that. And it might not be a product of the work that you're, so just to be transparent, you guys, sometimes those claps that you're getting are like claps from people that are like, oh, it's good that you even did this. This was really brave of you. Like, this was great. And that's good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just to say that, like, maybe next time you get up there, maybe this is your fourth or fifth time doing a poem, and people, you don't get a rewind, right? Or you don't get a,
you get this.
I don't know. You get that, maybe you got some other stuff that you got to work out. But yeah, maybe you don't get a rewind, or people aren't kind of clapping as hard, or people aren't kind of reacting the way that they reacted maybe after the past couple times. Like, I'm sure you're not going to be like, well, this is not the life for me. Well, hopefully you don't, hopefully you're like, well, let me keep going, let me keep writing. Or maybe that audience just isn't the one that's receptive to that poem, and you just maybe there's other people that are going to be receptive to your poems, or maybe there's work that you can do in your poems. So any number of these things could be the solution, but it's just to say that a lot of times the things that you're doing need some changing, but a lot of times it means that you need to just keep pushing and keep doing the thing that you were doing that was working, because it's going to start working again.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, there's other things too. You just talking to your audience, surveys, things like that, things on social media, things you can do. Actually, onto that point, something I'd also like to incorporate. So we know how to do like some technical stuff. Like, we're not like the most advanced, but we know some like basic video production. We know about lighting and cameras.
I invented the light bulb, so I don't know what this guy's talking about. I invented AI. And when I mean AI, I do mean Albert Illustrator, which is just a drawing that I made of a guy named Albert. It's a comfortable space for me. But no, I'm not great at technical stuff. I'm not great at it. It makes me uncomfortable. I use a rotary phone. This is a rotary camera. We had to dial this thing up for to be talking to you right now.
Camera. Just
We're talking to you through 2005's MySpace
I did have to
account.
twist the lens, but it's not. No. So I want to incorporate some elements. I don't want to live stream an open mic. I don't want to do that, and I also don't want to. There's a lot of other channels out there. Like you have your Voices in Power. You have your Right About Now. I don't know if they record everybody that steps on their stage. It kind of feels like it seems like they record everybody. And I don't mean that in a bad thing. Like, cool.
Jeff is like, anybody can be on that.
No, you have to get on the stage first.
I think, okay, so here's the thing.
I understand I get
I think there's some value there.
There's some value there.
There's some real value. Because it's like, if I'm a person that wants to go to a poetry show and like I see that, because the thing is, here's also a secret. 95% of poets starting out think that they are essentially like Dinesh Smith when they first start. They think they're that. They're like, I'm already there. Like I'm just waiting for y'all to realize it, right? They think that they are some like these really great pillars of the poetry world already. And so if you can get great sound, great video quality on a poem that you wrote, and you're saying it out in front of people, and it can go on a really large, and it can go on a platform, like that's going to make you want to follow the platform immediately. But that's not only going to make you want to follow the platform, but it's also going to make you want to share the work. So now everybody's like, oh, like that's a no-brainer.
So this is a social media aspect, like a very smart one. I mean, it's working for them. I mean, this is like
so it seems like anybody.
No, man, I just meant it from like a volume thing.
You're not making it better.
They got a lot of videos.
So many poems are just so many poems are just on there. It's like, are they poems? Like, I mean, who knows?
Because most people, if they're making recordings of their poems, it's themselves, maybe even in front of a mirror, holding up their phone, like being like, oh, you know. But no, this is like they got multiple camera angles. You know, they even got like the 4K, you know, and things like that. They got the sound, and a lot of people don't.
I don't think shooting in 4K like. That's a whole other thing we talked about, you know. But like, you know, you go to most open mics, you don't leave with like, oh, I'm going to get a recording that I can send to people of myself reading my work that looks, you know, professional. Yeah, because I think the accessibility of, you know, the equipment used to be really reserved for if your poem, if you were a really well liked and admired poet already, and you had access to those platforms that you're able to record that stuff on. So it kind of imposes that importance onto your poem, because you know, now it's like, you know, I have a poem on Right About Now, I have a poem, you know, on these platforms, and it's look how well it's produced and everything like that, which, you know, it's just the wave.
James is commenting on like, you know, one person will make a 4-line poem about a dog and have 1,000 likes, and one other person writes a great poem and gets no likes. That's a whole other.
Well, hold on, because it depends on the dog. That's first of all, because if you got a 4-line poem about a dog, I might tap in with that.
I feel like we're getting into that almost like Rupi Kaur discussion about, or like Megan Fox.
We still got to do that. Did I drop the ball with that? I think I might have dropped the ball.
I dropped the ball as well.
Okay, we need to get
send. So for those who don't know, Megan Fox released a book of poetry that's like the best-selling book of poetry, and
she's clearly the best of us.
It depends on. Anyways, there's factors.
Jeff is really attached to
we're slowly writing a response, Optimus Prime response to Megan Fox. So keep an eye out for those poems.
Please keep an eye out for them.
So thinking back to our open mic, so something I am toying with is bringing the equipment, not live streaming, not shooting the whole thing, but you can let me know your thoughts on this. But like, kind of doing like an encore kind of thing, where it's like paying attention to how people respond to poets during the open mic, and then choosing like 3 or 4, or even just like randomly picking 3 or 4 people who performed, and then having like kind of the audience vote on someone.
Okay.
Allowing just hear me out.
I'm listening. I'm here.
And then recording at the end of the show recording that poet reading one other poem. So my thinking, and hear me out on this, and I'd love your guys' input on this as well. So my thinking is that this again, it gives you that kind of high production value video that you can like spread on socials, but it also ties in some of that. I don't want to say like prestige, but kind of it makes it something that's like, oh, not everyone gets this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm right up there with you. I think creating high quality video sound, like video content that has high quality sound is like that's. What can you explain the voting thing? Like what's happening with the vote exactly?
So like the thing I have in my head right now is you bring poets up, kind of like just by a round of applause, you know, having the audience pick a poem. Pick a poet, and then so it's kind of like the popular choice, kind of like popular vote, and then having that poet then.
So wait, so like after like,
so like the open mic's done, we finish the open mic, we do our voting, and then that one poet gets selected. They get to do one final poem to send us off into the night, and that poem will also be recorded.
Doesn't sound like a bad idea.
I've never seen anything like this before, so there's all kinds of things that can go crazy wrong. But
yeah, the only thing I'm thinking, and again, this is also like, you know, I don't. The only issue that I could see with that idea is I think the poets who weren't chosen's reaction to that concept, where they might be like, oh, I didn't get chosen, I don't like this thing. Or it could be, you know, like let's say for instance, if there's no admission cost to get into the show, then if somebody just brings 10 people, and then those 10 people are going to vote for their person regardless of what happens. And so they're just like it feels like it'd be easy to, if the system were in which somebody gets high, because again, I think that's a fairly
okay.
No, go ahead.
But that also rewards that person for you're supporting the show. You brought us 10 more people. You're supporting the show. I don't mind. You support me. I don't mind supporting you in a way. I'm okay with that.
The game is on. The game is on.
But again, like this is in. You can win some by having more friends. I mean, it's.
See that lonely guy over there?
You're bringing friends to my show. You're helping my show.
That's fair. I mean, okay, so I mean, what about this? Like, what about if the person that won isn't going to be somebody that frequents the show? Like maybe, like so maybe they're like, I just want this high quality video, and maybe they have no connectivity or no anything to the poetry community except for this opportunity that they saw in being able to perform at the show. So this person brings 10 people that you're never going to see again, because these 10 people are only coming because they want to support their friend or whoever this person is. But then the person that doesn't get to go up again is like, oh, the system is rigged. And even if I pour my heart out in the poem and I really, really enjoyed this poem, like with a slam, to be clear, slams can be kind of like that too. But the difference with a slam is that the judges are, at least supposedly, random people from the audience that have no connection to any of the artists, which is, so if I lose a slam, I could probably swallow that maybe a little bit easier than like if somebody's like, oh, the way that you win is if all the people that you brought, because you brought people, vote for you and they don't vote for this other person. And let's say that other person is a person that would have been a loyal audience or attendee for years to come, but they were like, oh, this system feels like I can't win this system because maybe I can't bring as many people that are only here. They're not even necessarily for poetry. They're just here to yell during this segment of the show.
So there's for sure there's trade-offs. So first thing, am I gonna be? Is that gonna set me that I lose someone that gets so upset that they wanted to get picked and they got picked on stage and someone else beat them and they're like, oh, I didn't get picked by the audience. This is the whole reason I came to this show. You know,
but that's not the thing though, because the thing isn't that they're mad they didn't get picked. It's like people can accept losing, but what a lot of people can't accept. So like let's say there was like this game last season, like and like kind of leading up into the playoffs, like right before the playoffs started, where in which essentially Jason Tatum, LeBron was going up for a layup at the very end of the game. It was like a buzzer beater type situation. He was going up for a layup in order to, I think it was to tie, because I think they were going to lose if he missed it, like because he did miss it. And Jason Tatum hit his arm. But Jason Tatum hit his arm, and when Jason Tatum hit his arm, he missed, but the refs didn't catch it. Like people can accept if LeBron, like if the game is the game and you miss the shot, and like that's whatever. But the problem that people have, or if LeBron gets fouled and they call the foul and LeBron misses the 2 free throws,
LeBron gets fouled.
I mean, they used to. They used to. Yeah, but essentially it's just like if he gets fouled and then he misses the free throws, and then it's like, oh, like I could stomach that. But the reason why it was like such a viral moment, and the reason why it had such lasting power in the media and the reason why even bringing it up today, people still remember it freshly right now. It's because like the thing that happened was there was something clear that happened that they can't stomach how that situation progressed, which is the only thing that I'm saying as far as the person. This, I don't know. This is just a work, like a theory. But this person that's in the audience, that's like a poet that maybe is like, oh, like I'm willing to sign up under the assumption that if my poem is better to somebody in this audience, then they're gonna cheer. But if they didn't sign, the thing that they maybe didn't sign up for is if my poem loses because this person brought 30 people.
I have an idea, and it also removes some of the friction of like getting people on stage and doing the voting. Okay, at the beginning of the open mic, you know, you're kind of just talking to the crowd, getting the vibe. Pick someone in the crowd, make sure that they're staying for the show, and then asking them, okay, at the end of the show, you will have the ability to give the encore to one poet. So now we've done 2 things. We have given that role responsibility onto a crowd member. So now they're feeling privileged themselves. So it's a lot of weight on them.
Yeah.
And then they're also giving that opportunity to someone else. So there's that kind of like that sense of gifting. You know what I mean?
That fixes. I mean, that literally closes not only, but it also creates, I think, a space in the show for kind of this not a feeling of authority, but it's like I think I would even say if you set up this dynamic and you were just like, the thing that might be hard is like somebody coming in and kind of being like a little, oh, I don't know anybody, and then they really know like exactly who they would give it to. But I mean, I guess you could technically do that with slam too, right? So like maybe this is kind of an unavoidable part. But even if at the beginning of the show you were just like, you know, who all is new out here, who's never been, like kind of do that kind of routine, so that way you can kind of get a good amount of people that are new. And then after you do that, once the show is over, once the show is kind of wrapped up, like, okay, now you might have maybe 3 or 4 people that you can choose from, and then you'd be like, Dan, hey Dan, how did you like the show? Like, oh, okay. Like, Dan, okay, listen, you heard from this poet, blah 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 blah. Who do you want to see perform again? And then that way, it's like now even the audience, now you have to really work hard to appease everybody, because or to do good with everybody, kind of like in how in slam maybe you're performing to the audience, but you're like locking eyes with the judges, like here.
Uh-huh.
But like now, it's like you don't know which one of these new people is going to be the decision maker. So you just are performing your heart out, and now it encourages the audience to be paying attention because now it's like these new people don't know who could be it, and maybe you don't always have to choose a new person. Like maybe these people come in a couple times and you just notice like maybe this person just knows everybody, but they're not like particular friends with anybody.
Yeah.
And then you could even do like a little other segment, like why did you choose it? Like at the end of battle rap, I don't know how familiar you are with like the battle rap scene, but at the end of like a lot of battle rap like videos and stuff like that, you'll have these people kind of giving these interviews where like, this is the reason why I thought this guy wins, this is the reason why I thought that guy won, this guy did this guy did this. So you can kind of have that as kind of like an after action, so that way it kind of feels like, oh, I get to do something else, which is this other video content, which is like, I feel like this person is this kind of poet and they're this is this, and you can even play that in conjunction with the person's poem.
Yeah.
Look at us workshopping ideas. Look at.
I like that. I like this. I think that I like this encore idea, and I like that aspect of getting the audience involved. That removes a lot of the friction and it puts a lot of responsibility, like off of the host and me and onto someone else. But I think they would enjoy it.
Yeah,
you can find someone. If they don't like it, you can pick someone else. Yeah, and no one's doing that. It's like that could be like art.
But see, now we said it.
It's okay. Mic. Go start your own open mic. Let's not go.
You do it yourself.
Got villain arcs. Oh my gosh. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people are getting this.
Yeah.
People are getting this. Yeah. So I threw down a lot at you. Most likely this will be starting after the holidays. I need to talk with Throwaway Cafe and Tim.
Shout out Tim.
Yeah, Tim's the best. Yeah. Let's go. So entering the new year. So keep an eye out, because most likely for the first show, I'd probably make an event page. I might even make a note that like, hey, we're giving like 4 spots will be given to people online. So if you want to register for those, to be picked for those, just to kind of get that going. And then
we're giving away 3 big beef and cheddars. The first 3 people to come to the door. So get excited.
You have to wait for them to solidify though, because they're liquid.
It's okay.
They're in a plastic bag.
Done.
I have to pour your sandwich into a grill.
I have to pour it into the mold so that it can form into what will be a sandwich for sure.
Yeah. Because I think leveraging in 2023, I think you have to.
Or it could be a wrap. The thing is, we never really know. It's like kind of like Mjolnir. It's like we just pour it into the mold. The star shoots the energy at the mold, and then like we open it up and we're like, oh, what do we have?
What did we just see?
Gosh.
I mixed an Arby's reference with a Marvel's reference. And poetry. That's nobody's doing that.
You can, doesn't. All right. So I mean, I think open mics in 2023. I mean, these are things that even like 4 or 5 years ago would have been somewhat difficult, but nowadays there's really no excuse. And so these are things, and we also have to know how to leverage it. So I think it's gonna be fun. I think we can make this open mic work.
I believe in us.
Yeah. But it's getting late. Well, let us know your guys' own thoughts on open mics, things like that. James has expressed some concern just based on where he lives. Not super accessible. We didn't get to talk about like online open mics and things like that. That's a whole other discussion. I don't know how you make an online open mic super. I mean, I know they can work, but it's. Anyways, gosh, I didn't see the Arby's, otherwise I wouldn't have brought that up.
Right.
I'm going to send us off into the night. Once more, my name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
Thanks to all our friends who joined us tonight. Thanks to Post. Thanks to James. Thanks to... Where'd they go? Is it Ibri? Ibri. Thanks to Ibri for being here.
Shout out to Ibri.
Thanks to AJ Ane.
Ajane.
I actually like that. I like the letters AJ. I'm feeling that. I'm gonna call it.
AJ.
Let me see how she.
Try it if you will. Do what you feel like, my
We'll
boy.
see how it goes. Cool. The saying, I love this. Yes, 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 yes. Put a big screen on stage and Zoom call. I don't know. We can. You can convince me that I need to live stream the open mic because right now I'm leaning no. But
The only reason I think the experience of I think actually IG. So there's like a lot of IG lives where like they're watching the post, but you have to get a really good position, really good sound setup that is not just like through your phone. Like it, I think watching an Instagram live is not great unless you can get a really good sound setup.
So I was thinking about. So one of the things I technically could do is I could. I'm gonna get real geeky on you guys. So one of the things I could do is. I have like the traditional mic and like the PA system. But what I could do is I could, instead of that mic that I usually use I could use like this mic. And I could run everything actually through my computer. And then what I could do is I could send the sound output instead of like through my headphones, I could put the output through my speakers. So then what's literally happening is everything's kind of controlled on my laptop. So then we would actually get the right sound for a live stream, but I would also be able to project it through the speakers.
Wouldn't there be a delay though?
In terms of not for people in person, there wouldn't be a delay. But for people online,
the sound that's coming in through the phone for IG, or maybe are you talking about like live streaming through Zoom?
Yeah, I could live stream it to YouTube and I could live stream to Facebook.
Oh
yeah, I can't live stream it to. Sound. I'm leaning towards no, but I mean anything's possible. In the words of Kevin Garnett, our Lord and Savior. Kevin.
Anything's possible.
Did I ever tell you that Kevin Garnett was talking about the worst smack talkers? And he said it was Tim Duncan.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
He's like, Tim Duncan, what Tim Duncan does is like, ooh, nice try.
I'd heat up at that too, honestly. Like, there's probably nothing hit me up more than somebody just cool, calm, and collected from the Virgin Islands. Just, ooh, no.
Better luck next time.
Oh, man. I bet you'll work on that in practice.
I believe you knew.
And then just like doing like a sky hook shot, banking it 12 times in front of you.
We're heading out. James heading out. We're all heading out. Thanks everyone for being with us. We appreciate you all.
Get out of here, James. Hey, get out of here, man. Have a great one.
I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Good afternoon. You guys take care. This has been Diversity is Live.